is Adel Sultan. I'm an aviation psychologist. And recently I have been doing a survey on a psychiatric hospital in Kuwait. I happened to be there doing a research. And I was asked to do some search on the facility itself. And today I'm here to present to you with the findings. There's 12 people in this class. 12 people. Out of 12 people, I see 11 right now that are definitely going to have a mental disorder throughout their lives. Let me say that again, for those of you who didn't catch that. Out of the 12 people in front of me right now, 11 people will be diagnosed with a mental disorder throughout their lives. That's 98%. So if I was you, I would listen, because this is a place that you might end up in. What is a mental disorder? A mental disorder could be anything from phobia, it could be depression, it could be bipolar disease, schizophrenia, if it's extreme. Your family members could have it. My little brother has ADHD. It's a growing trend right now that depression is increasing, and it's hitting everybody on this site. I'd like to welcome you to the Psycho Hotel. Why do you think I call it the Psycho Hotel? Because this country has something that nowhere in the world has. It's a phenomenon. Nowhere in the world can you admit a patient and leave him there for the doctors to diagnose and fix. This does not happen anywhere in the world. Only in Kuwait. Well, it's good because you have free accommodation, you have nice beds, you have nice food. You can check in, but you can never check out. This is a psychotic hotel in Kuwait. I'll tell you a problem with that. What Kuwait does not understand. Once you admit somebody in a hospital, you leave them there for an X amount of time. If you pass a certain age, a person becomes something called institutionalized. In the United States, there's a limit of 3 years. After 3 years, a board has to meet up, and they have to understand, is the person, should he continue in the hospital or should he go out? If he is a danger to society, he will continue. If not, he will be reintroduced back to the society itself. In Kuwait, I'll teach you about the culture, why people do this. People are stigmatized by mental disorders. When they find somebody that has a mental disorder, let's say schizophrenia, for example, they will see the person as insane. How can you blame them? The person, you cannot hit him, you cannot punish him, you cannot even talk to him. What would you do? I guess you would do the same. You would trust the authorities to deal with it. And you trust that the hospital itself is capable of fixing this issue. Unfortunately, it's not. In one situation, this is what happens to you. You become institutionalized. There's one incident that's recorded in Kuwait Psychiatric Hospital. A person has been there for 25 years. Imagine, 25 years. A person has been in that hospital. This person has no chance of being fixed or no chance of being healed from his mental disorder. He is forever institutionalized. So all you're doing now is taking a mind and you're taking a person's soul. In the United States, people are introducing them back to society. They find them low demanding jobs. They try to make them function, make them sane again. But in Kuwait, it's more of a prison than it is a hospital. Another problem I found was the units. The units inside the psychiatric hospital had 3 problems. In one unit I found that they had bipolar, they had depression, they had schizophrenia. They had all these disorders grouped in one place, which is absolutely wrong. Each disorder needs a separate unit. You cannot combine mental diseases together. This just doesn't work. You had children's units, which had problems with them also. In the children's units, you need a playroom. And the playroom has to have a camera, and you have to see the child play. And this comes in useful when you interview the parent itself. You have to see if the parent, you have to see how the child is responding in playing games. Is he autistic? What kind of autistic is he? Is he an autistic savant? Or something else? So it's very, very important to have a playroom. And a playroom should be something that's welcoming, something that's multifunction. So you can see the child. We do have a playroom in the psychiatry hospital, but it's very substandard. We have the forensic psychiatry units next to the children and the adolescents units. Forensic psychiatry is to do with murders, crimes. This is something that has to do with criminals. They send them there to see if they are insane or insane. I found that it was a walking distance from the forensic psychiatry unit to the children's unit. I'm sure there's security. Security people are there. But you can see the aspect of how the proximity of these two units living together, which is reckless. For the teenagers in the psychiatric hospital, teenagers are grouped with the children, people who have mental disorders. This is very wrong. When I interviewed one doctor, he told me that one of his patients told him, we got more than one complaint that from teenagers that they are not children, and this affects how much they will open up. When you sit in a therapy room and you class as people as having a bipolar disease, for example, you cannot put a 5-year-old patient with an 18-year-old patient because it's a different problem. A person that has hormonal problems, a person that has, it's different than a child problem. And it's also not same. So you have to class them as teenagers in one room and children in one room. In Kuwait, we have a lack of efficiency, and people are grouped together, and we don't think about it. The need for more psychiatrists to be employed. When I was interviewing the doctor, I asked him, how do you feel about your job? Do you enjoy it? He told me that all doctors in this hospital are overworked. They sometimes go for 48 hours per week. And there is no time. And they are dealing with different cases at one time. They might be dealing with schizophrenia, they might be dealing with bipolar disease all at once. And other mental disorders all at once. And they become burnout. When you become burnout, you become reckless. Anybody here in this room? If you are overworked, you'll be stressed. You start making hasty decisions. You start making the wrong choices. And this is very dangerous when you're dealing with the mind. Dealing with the mind is a sensitive thing. So you require patience to listen to the patient himself. We need to employ more doctors. And this is not employing people outside the country. We have psychiatrists all over the place. We have more than 100 psychiatrists being graduated every 5 years from universities. But more and more students and graduates are opting to go to the private sector. Nobody wants to go to the Cycle Hotel, because the Cycle Hotel is somewhere that is taboo. It's the black horse of Kuwait. Nobody wants to go near that place. It's that scary. This leads to something else. When doctors are overworked and they reach their burnout rate, they refuse to do therapy. Would you blame them? I wouldn't blame them myself. If you are overworked, would you go through therapy? Would you start listening to people? You would not. You'd opt to, if you had the option to drug the patient and give him drugs to sedate him and to give him in a more controlled state, you would. But giving drugs to patients, drugs and pharmaceuticals is not something that should be taken lightly. One of the things is an ADHD. It's an ever-growing syndrome in Kuwait. Most people think that it's correlated with diabetes and correlated with genetics. But in Kuwait, it is a growing thing. ADHD is the attention deficit hyper disorder. This mental disease you have here, this person becomes hyper and they cannot focus on one thing. My little brother has this. When we first took him to psychoanalyze, they offered the parents, would you like the drugs to calm him down, to give him stick? This is not right. Therapy is the right way. We are living in an age right now that we have touched every aspect of the human mind. There are different kinds of psychology now. You have behavior psychologists. You have environmental psychologists. You have psychiatrists now. So drugs and other methods should be used last. One more thing that the doctors have in the power is electric shock therapy. What is electric shock therapy? This is what it is. Electric shock therapy is being phased out in the psychiatric world as lesions done surgically on patients' minds. Electric shock therapy might be used in extreme situations, and it is it does help the patient. But you have a problem with this. The only people that get electric shock therapy are on the verge of suicide, bipolar disease, manic depression. So they shock the brain until he is fixed again. But this is how it looks. This is a person getting electric shock therapy. So if you had the option to give the person therapy or just send them into electric shock therapy, this will be the easiest choice for you. Because after this state, the person is numb and he is in a mental state that he's not suicidal anymore. This should be phased out. Like I said, psychiatry has evolved. We have evolved into something that we touch every aspect of the human mind. The facilities itself. Facilities itself. I found that, as my colleagues mentioned earlier, that they had filing systems. Filing systems is an ancient method of filing. There's a big problem with this in a psychiatric hospital. Because when I was interviewing the doctor inside the hospital, I saw patient's files stacked up on his desk. There's no confidentiality. Anybody could look into any file and see. And when you're dealing with something this sensitive, this should be confidential. Let alone something that is more functional. We are in the age of computers, we're in the age of technology. We should not be using filing systems for anything anymore. Even libraries now don't have this. We have computers for everything. Why don't we have it in the psychiatric hospital? The buildings itself, we need to rebuild it. The building outside was just renovated 3 years ago to look welcoming, and the sign was changed. But once you enter inside, it's like a prison. Patients cannot be treated. As a patient, if you have a mental disease, you're in the hospital, it's very hard for you to be treated because it's not welcoming. It's very stigmatic, and you sit and you see all these walls around you closing in. So we have to change this. We have to change the building inside. We have to revamp it. If there's a chance, we have another hospital, another psychiatric hospital that deals with other cases. We separate the cases. What have we learned today? In the beginning, I told you that most of you in this class will be diagnosed with mental disorder. This is not a place you would like to enter. Like you, I was very traumatized by this fact. When I entered the hospital, I could not understand why this was happening. When I asked around, I understood that the Kuwaiti Psychiatric Hospital is the black horse of the hospitals in Kuwait. Nobody wants to look at it. Because this hospital is for psychos. This is not what the hospital is. This is a hospital like any other hospital. It treats patients. A mental disorder is the same as any other disorder, any other disease that you might encounter in your life. So it should have the proper facilities. It should have the proper doctors. It should have the proper equipment to deal with these people. One day, God forbid, you yourself was given a child that has a mental disorder. You wouldn't want him to be in this hospital. So I urge you to look into this matter and fix it as soon as possible. Because if this situation continues, and with the growing number of psychiatric disorders that are increasing with time, you will find something that you cannot fix later on. Thank you.